We're continuing our Grid Algo trading tutorial videos. Today is what I would assume to be our second video in the series. First one, if you are just familiarizing yourself with grid trading, then the first video is the grid basics. It's also in this playlist in our channel. If you've seen it already, then that is gonna be the second one, kind of continuation of the grid basics. And now we're going to see how actually to launch grid on GoodCrypto. We are gonna be doing that on spot derivatives. Launching grid on derivatives is gonna be a separate video. Today we'll be looking at launching grids on spots. We won't be covering the strategy or kind of the more intricate things of how better to position yourself the market, like what instruments to choose, what type of grids to run, when, and so forth. That's gonna be covered in the following videos. Today we're just looking at the basics of launching the grid, of what functionality does GoodCrypto offer, which options do we have, which decisions should you make, and basics of pros and cons and their trade-offs of choosing them. So let's, without further ado, let's jump into it. So we've been doing that on Binance, on spot instruments, spot pair, actually BNB USDT, one of the most traded pairs. So to launch the grid, let's go to the Algo tab here. Grid is already selected here. Yeah, we offer Infinity Trail, and the GCA is coming quite soon. Or maybe if you're watching that in some time, then GCA is already available on our app. But today we're focusing on Grid. So Grid is already chosen here. And once you've just chosen the grid here, so for example, if you were Infinity Trail, then you've chosen grid, automatically you'll see kind of default settings of the grid field here and showing on the chart as well. So what we have here, let's start from go from top to down. So first two fields are the highest and the lowest grid level. So basically those define the range of your grid. So the highest price and the lowest price between which the grid will actually function. So whenever the price is inside those two borders, right, between those, so you see here the highest grid level by default it's set here for at 330 USDT for one BNB, and the lowest stays at 310. Again, where this should be higher or lower, and how, like, what are the criteria to choose it. That's a topic for different discussion. Today we're just gonna show you, the basics again. So the lowest grid level is here. It's denoted by this line here, and it says lowest, and it's green because it's below the market price. So that means that the grid will be set in a buy order here. That will be the lowest price level at which the buy order will be set. And the highest grid level here is showing here on the chart. You can see 330, 330. That means that their grid will set the highest price at which the grid will set a sell order in this case, because that's above the market price. The sell orders are placed. In the course, if you watch the grid basics, that you probably know that in the course of the grid's life cycle, all those orders can change, meaning from jump from or change from sell to buy, meaning if the price goes up and leaves the grid range, then all those sell orders will execute, and instead in place of them the buy orders will appear. And by the same token, if the price goes down and leaves the grid range to the downside, then all the buy orders here will execute and will be replaced by sell orders with anticipation of pricing moving up and So, but that's again the next step. So far, so good. Highest grid level, lowest grid level. So shown here again. That what that means? That means that all the other grid levels, if you can see here, there are 5 of them, or not, doesn't matter how many of them we will have. All the grid levels, all the orders by the that will be put on the chart by the sent to the exchange by the grid, they will stay inside that range. Again, that's the highest grid range, that the highest price at which the order will be set, and the lowest price at which the order will be set by the grid. That it also what it also means if and when the market price stays between those lines, so in range, so inside the range of the grid, that means the grid is active and is making your money whenever the price goes from one grid level to another. So whenever the price leaves the grid range, so goes above the highest level or below the lowest level, the grid is out of range, meaning it stays idle. Those orders basically are just sitting there, and you have probably some position because some of the orders were executed. So your ultimate goal, is to maximize. That's kind of the essence of the grid. Of the grid profitability. Your goal is to maximize the time that the grid, or the market price rather, would spend inside the grid range, inside those boundaries, highest and lowest grid levels. So again, how to do that? What are the criteria? What are the best shortcuts or mental shortcuts to define, where to put the highest and the lowest grid levels? That's a topic of separate discussion. Today, just gonna show you, just to explain, in very simple terms what that is. So we've covered highest grid level and lowest grid level. They're set right now. Let's leave them, where they're set initially. That's okay. Let's move further down. Then we have levels. That means how many grid levels you can actually set here. That means the maximum number of orders that grid will be placing inside those grid boundaries that you defined earlier. As you can see here, grid can have a minimum amount of 2 levels, because if there is just one level, one order, it's not a grid, it's not an algo, doesn't make sense. So the very basic minimum is 2 orders, and I've shown you how the grid with 2 levels will function again in the grid basics video. You might find actually grids of just 2 levels useful in some situations. Again, that's going to be covered in a separate video, but so that's the minimum amount of levels. The maximum amount of levels, they might differ or vary for the different instruments or exchanges. Listen, GoodCrypto. So for Binance Spot, the maximum amount of levels for a grid is 30. For most of the other exchanges or other instruments, for derivative instruments on Binance, for example, the maximum number of levels is 50. The reason for that is a topic of separate discussion, but it has to do with rate limits. Unfortunately, Binance's API is not that robust and doesn't offer capability for us to give you, ability to trade with more than 30 levels on the spot instruments. But even 30 levels is more than enough for most of the situation. For 99% of the time, that's more than enough. So, okay, again, having chosen the highest and lowest grid level, we have to choose number of levels we're gonna run the grid on, and the logic. If the logic behind the highest and lowest grid level is to maximize the time to which the grid the market price spends inside the grid range, then the number of levels would basically the decision on how many levels is to have inside the grid leads to the decision of how often how often the grid will trade. So whether how big of a price fluctuation inside the grid range would be required for the grid to actually trade. And the second is that consequently, depending on that, is there how much money or how large of a P&L you'll be making with each kind of buy and sell pair of the grid or iteration of the grid. So let me dive into this a bit further. As you can see now, in those grid boundaries, we've chosen, or rather, it was a default setting of 5 grid levels, meaning, again, if you've seen the grid basics, meaning that one level will always stay idle, and we'll have 4 orders active at any moment in time inside the grid. That also means for the grid to trade here, the price should go, from here up to here, and then come back to this. So basically, the price that the distance the price should travel for the grid to work is denoted by the distance between the levels. It's this distance or this distance. For example, if the price will move up to here, and the sell order will execute, a buy order will be placed on this level that is currently empty. That means that you need the price to move this distance for the grid to trade, and consequently, if you increase the number of grid levels, remember the highest and the lowest level stays constant. So when you increase the amount of grid levels, I'm doing here, I'm going from 5 to 10. As you can see, the grid became much tighter. The distance between the grid levels decreased. That means that grid will trade much more often. So their distance, the price, market price should move or should cover for the orders to execute became much lower, twice lower than when we had five levels. As you can now eyeball, if we're looking at 1 minute candles, that looks like this grid would execute a trade every, I don't know, at least for the past hour or so, it would have executed a trade every 10 minutes or so, maybe. When we had just 5 levels, let me go back to 5 levels. You can see that for the past hour, this grid would hardly trade at all. It would have been, stayed not the hour, but okay, at least for this amount of 1 minute candles, the grid would have stayed idle. So the logic tells it that the more grid levels, the tighter the grid, the better. And in a way, it is so. In a way that you want your grid to trade regularly. You don't want it to sit idle for too long, because otherwise you're not generating. If it's not trading, you're not generating P&L. But there is also, with older advantages usually come in hand some disadvantages. So if you increase the number of grid levels inside the grid range, the frequency with which the grid trades increases, but the amount of profit that grid makes with each trade decreases, right, proportionately. How to eyeball it, or how to understand that? So what is like how grid makes money? The grid would buy here and would sell here, right? So the difference between this price now it is around $2 basically, $2, and then weighted by the size of the order, that basically denotes your profit. So you can see that, and the distance between those prices is measured in percentages. Basically, you can measure it, and for your handiness, we actually show it here. So in this case, roughly, if the grid buys here and sells here, you're expected to make 0.5% of the P&L, 0.5% of the P&L relative to the value of your single order. So depending on the order size, that for example, if you have here 1 BNB as an order size, so you bought 1 BNB here and sold it here, you expect to make half of the percentage point of the P&L. So, half of a percentage of the value of 1 BNB, that would be your P&L that you're going to make. And obviously, if you had, just 5 levels here, let me go back to 5 levels, you see that the P&L per level increased. It didn't increase, it increased even, more disproportionately, I would say, right? So it's It's now in this case, if you buy here, okay, buy here in this and sell here, you're going to make 1.34%. So that's the trade-off. You see, that's one of the major trade-offs of the grid. The first one is where to put the highest and the lowest grid level, and this is the trade-off of how many grids to have. But it denotes basically, where you looking at either having your grid trade more frequently, but making less with each trade, or you want your grid to trade less frequently, but make more for each trade. There is no right and wrong answer to that question. That would depend on the volatility of each instrument, and you can use some kind of advanced financial calculator or Excel model, or a backtest tool to see what would have been optimum optimum number of grid levels given some kind of range for the past, to find what was the number of grid levels that would maximize your PNL. But even that, theoretically, you can do that. But even that is not, as their past performance is not the guarantee of the future results. So what you will measure this way is just given if the volatility stayed the same in the future, then that's the best way to go. But the problem with volatility is it's volatile, right? Forgive me for the pun, but yeah, you don't know whether the volatility will stay this way or can be more volatile, less volatile. So whatever worked best in the past will not necessarily work best in the future. So again, that's the part of the setting up the grid is more art than science. Okay, anyways, as I said before, I'll dive deeper into trade-offs of choosing the right grid range, highest and lowest grid levels, and the number of levels at separate videos. Now we're staying with the basics, so we've covered those three settings. Let's look at this one once again at the PNL per level. I've partially covered it already, but let's dive a bit deeper. So for you to not to eyeball or try to come up with calculations yourself for how much money you will be making with this trade here, we are calculating it for you when you're doing that. So again, that's PNL per level. That means that you have some order of a fixed size, right? So for example, if you had one BNB here and you bought it here and then you sold it here, then the profit you're going to make from buying and selling that one BNB is gonna be 1.34% of that BNB. That's pretty much straightforward. Once again, important to remember here is that it's not the profit of your total funds locked inside this grid. So for example, if you ran this grid with 5 levels and you put one BNB at each level, you would have locked 5 BNB here. So it's not 1%, 134% of their 5 BNB, but rather 134 of 1 BNB. So that's PNL per level, right? Okay, that's kind of clear. Now let's talk about why there is a range here, why it's not a single number, but rather 1.34 to 1.41. The reason for that is that if you can see that by default this grid and most of the grids that you will see in GoodCrypto or in other trading terminals spread grid levels evenly, and as we measure the PNL per level in percentages, then you see there kind of the distance between the levels stays pretty much the same. In this case, it's a nice $5. So you have a level 310, 315, 320, 25, 30, and those $5 are the different percentage of these sums. For example, $5 from 310, that's a bit more than $5 from 315 in percentage terms, right? So the higher the base, the amount you're making in USDT, that's 5 USDT, it stays the same. So 5 divided by 310 is less than 5 is more rather than the 5 divided by 315. That means that basically you will be doing the will maximize maximum PNL or maximum profit you'll be getting from this grid if it fluctuates between the market price fluctuates between those two levels. So you'll be making that's the highest higher higher boundary of the range. So you'll be making 1.41% if you buy here and sell here. But if the price goes up and you'll be trading between those two levels, you'll be making 1.34% if you buy here and you sell here. You can, if you that's not intuitive, immediately intuitive, the math for you, you can try, start pause the video and try it with the calculator. You'll see for yourself how it works. But that's just, the basic math here working. Is there a way to keep a constant PNL here? Yes, there is. The way to do it is to put the grid levels not, symmetrical and with equal distance between the grid levels, but with increasing distance so as to have keep that percentage constant. And that's one of the options that is available in some terminals. It's not available in GoodCrypto yet, but definitely coming to the future. But that's more for advanced settings that you not necessarily need. At least the beginning of your trading journey with grid trading, that's not something that you'll have to worry about too much. Okay, so that's covered. Now let's see what means after fee. Obviously, if the trading is not free, so each order that is executed with the exchange, you are paying a commission to the exchange. Again, when crypto does not charge any commissions on that, right? So you are not paying to us anything besides or on top of the subscription fee for the Pro package. If you have Pro, then you can run your grids for free. The only commissions you pay are commissions to the exchange, your normal trading fees. So for for example, to realize PNL and to buy here and sell here, you have to pay fee when you buy here and when you sell here. So basically, you pay trading fee to Binance 2 times in this regard, and of course that decreases your PNL, right? So again, for your comfort, we're including that fee in our PNL calculations, and those percentages that you see here, they are after fee. A couple of things to note here. First is to see that we have taken the basic fee of, the basic fee tier, the lowest fee tier, so we don't know, there is no way for us to know which fee tier you belong to. So we assume the worst, the basic fee tier with the highest fee. In case you are a frequent trader and you have an advanced fee tier and your actual fees are lower, then the PNL will be higher. So that's something that we explain here. You just have to understand that, again, if you're just starting trading, you will probably have the basic fee tier. You don't have to worry about that. So that's exactly the fee that you will be paying, and the calculation is 100% correct for you. Another thing to note here is that we're looking at Binance and some other exchanges. They do offer some fee discounts. For example, here, if you pay your fee in BNBs, then you'll get on Binance a discount for the fee for fees. The fee will be lower. That's also not something that we include here. So if you're paying your Binance fee, trading fees in BNB, your actual PNL will be a bit higher. That's okay. You just have to keep that in mind and look at it at the worst case scenario. Okay, I'll also want to show you a quick way to kind of to use it or understand how, like, a mental shortcut for this. So for example, when you're deciding how tight your grid could be, you can actually, look at this field and see, how the PNL per level changes, and that will give you a good idea of how tight or why or not, or broad or tight or not tight your grid is, and as it is measured in percentage point, you can compare it between your different grids from different pairs. And at some point, if you trade long enough with grids, you'll have some mental kind of models, mental shortcuts, and you'll know that PNL per level of 1.34% is very loose for a grid, at least for liquid highly traded pair like BNB USDT, where price does not fluctuate that much. I mean, BNB It's not something that usually goes from up and down 30% per day. So that's what that amount would say would be on a loser side. If you have here, 10 levels and you have half percentage points, that would be something, kind of around the sweet spot. Maybe that's something like that. And if you go higher, continue to go higher with the number of grid levels, you can see with each grid level that they add, the PNL per level decreases. You can see that even with this kind of quite tight grid, you can even eyeball it, right? It's quite tight. You'll still be making something per level, but it decreases. That's not that much actually, and to generate a lot of final PNL, you have to agree to run for quite a long time and to stay inside the range for quite a long time. But if you continue going up, at some point in time, you'll see that your PNL here might become, okay, it's not zero yet, it's not become negative, but okay, forgive me for doing that. You cannot do that as a normal user. I have admin rights, so I can actually go higher than 30 levels. But imagine you can do that on other exchanges. For example, just imagine you have the right, you can go up to 50 levels. So let me just manually, using my admin privileges, put here 35 levels. Here you go. You can see that the PNL per level went negative. That means that if you make your grid this tight, obviously it will trade a lot, like trade frequently, unless your goal is to just increase the trading volume and sacrifice your profitability for it. You don't want to do that. You'll lose money with each trade. I mean, of course, you'll still buy. Basic principles stay the same. You still buy lower and you sell higher, but the difference between those two prices is so small that the trading fee that you pay to Binance, basically it's your P&L, and you'll even have to pay out your own pocket to the exchange you trade on. So you don't want to do that. One also important conclusion from that is that the lower the fees that exchange charges to you, the tighter the grid you can do and still stay, you have positive P&L. And that's a very important conclusion, and that's something which we looked upon in detail. In another video, we'll be looking at which exchange to choose and which pairs to choose to trade. So the fees that you pay for this exchange, for this instrument, it's very important. So in general, of course, you want lower fees. So you want in general to trade on the exchanges with lower fees, but also you want to look at the promotions. For example, like Binance is running, I think it's still running now. They have pairs which are traded to not USDT but to BUSD that have lower fees. For example, if we just change here from BNB to USDT, let's say we should have this pair, I think, right? BNB, BUSD. Here we go. Yep, there is zero fee. So look, let's go with the same. What the hell there? 35 levels. You see, it's still like at BNB USDT with this type of a grid, the same, the same highest and lowest grid levels and the same number of levels. The PNL was negative, right? So we had a minus 0.001 point of a PNL because you paid it all to fees. But if you are trading BNB USD, you don't pay any fees. Hence, you are making, even with this tight grid, you are making PNL still, and you actually, that means that you can go even tighter, right? Like way tighter. You can probably squeeze here 40 grids, even 50, right? So just imagine, look, 70 is still 70 grids in the same grid range. You are still positive. So 90 positive. So basically, as long as you don't pay any fees, you'll be actually positive no matter how tight the grid you run, because we always buy lower and sell higher, so it will always stay positive. So that's maybe a outsized effect on the P&L, because that's extreme case of not paying any fees at all. But if you think of it, it's not that of an extreme actually, because you can actually trade on some derivatives instruments and even get a rebate. Not pay any fees, but give the rebate. But again, that's a topic for entirely different discussion. It's very useful and it's very important discussion, but we will have it in some other video. Okay, let's go back to our BNB USDT with a normal Binance fee. So we've covered the highest and lowest grid level. We covered the levels, PNL per level, the fees of those PNLs, and how to look at it, how to think of those PNLs, where they, how to use them when choosing the tightness of your grid to measure, relative tightness or not tightness of your grid. Looseness, right? Tightness, that's the word I was looking for. How tight or loose grid is. Okay, now actually, let's go here. The next field is order size, which is kind of self-explanatory. The only thing to remember is, of course, is that this order size is gonna stay the same, right? So you choose one order size, and that means that the size will be used here, 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 all the grid levels, all the grid levels will send buy and sell orders of the size you choose here. So for spot, what we do, of course, given that you have to set your order size in base currency, in this case BNB, where we're calculating the size of in USDT, because that's kind of easy to, or more intuitive to understand. So you can see that roughly, if we put, say, okay, I want to get to, what have you, $10. Here is the thing. Yeah. Okay, so the thing is that, not the thing, but we have a very nice tool here. So I don't know if you probably don't know that if you have your field order size is empty, and the first time you hit here a plus sign, we fill it with their lowest or the minimum order size that can be accepted by the exchange. Binance has several checks, but in this case, they're going for at least 10 USDT of the order size, so the nominal amount should be not less than 10 USDT. So we cannot go lower than that. As you can see, when I try to go lower, the field actually goes red, meaning that something is wrong. In this case, it's too low, right? So let's go back to this one. So once again, just let me I repeat that. So if your fee, your order size field is empty and you hit plus button for the first time, we set you here the minimum order amount, and it works the same way on buy and sell tab. So that's actually useful to run the app. Anyway, so okay, that's the order size. That's it. Let's keep it to the minimum. So it's 0.033 BNB. It's around 10 USDT per level. That's something you probably want to keep this way, or it's a useful way to keep the numbers round. For example, keep their order size close to something that you can understand in a quoted currency, in USDT, for example. So you know that you have around $10 per each level, and it's easier mentally to calculate all the stuff going forward. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so pretty self-explanatory, but let's kind of skip the advanced setting for a bit, for a moment now, and let's go to the next one, funds needed. So funds needed, that's something that obviously stayed empty when we didn't have the order size, because we knew the number of levels, but we didn't know the order size. Now we know the order size, right? So once we have the order size, the number of levels, and basically the location of those levels, the prices to those levels will be, then we're able to calculate the funds required for your grid to run. And here is a trick or a difference, or important things to remember. At least at the moment, if you trade with grids on spot instrument in GoodCrypto app, you have grids both, kind of vanilla grid, which has orders both over, above the market price and below the market price, meaning you will have sell orders here and buy orders here. You have to have, if you trade BNB USDT, you have to have some BNB in your account to actually, to have something to sell, because those orders are sell orders. So whenever if the price after the grid is launched goes up, you have to sell the BNB, and to sell the BNB, you have to own them beforehand. Having said that, some or many of the grids and the trading terminals have an option buying those BNBs for you at the start of the grid or other, depending on other coins, depending on the pair you trade. We don't have that at the moment, but that's something that we will be implementing in the near future. So if you're watching that, probably this video in a month from when it was recorded, you'll see here another checkbox that will say buy the BNB for me before the start of the grid. But as of now, we don't have that, right? So to start the grid, you need some BNB, and how much of that? That's actually calculated. Look, you can eyeball from here. So given our current settings, at the start of the grid, you'll have to have 5 sell orders, and 5 sell orders. That means five times this amount for each order. That's the amount of BNB that you need, and you'll have 3 buy orders, and that basically order size times 3. So that actually you're buying with the USDT, you're selling BNB here, but you're spending USDT to buy BNB here. So you need USDT for these orders and BNB for these orders. 3 times 10.6, that's roughly $31. So that's what you need. Maybe to make it a bit more intuitive, look, let's go to the extreme and let's just put the whole grid under the market price so that we won't have any sell order, just the buy orders. You see, now you don't need any BNBs, right? The only thing you need to trade is the USDT, and vice versa. If we go to another extreme and put the grid above the market price, so that there will be only sell orders. So the only thing you need is BNB. You don't need any USDT, and the red here denotes that I don't have enough BNB on my account to cover that. So okay, you can see here, say I only have available. That's the amount of BNB available to have. So it's not enough. Okay, let's go back and to the kind of normal or standard grid with buy and sell orders. Okay, something. Okay, now I made it too tight, right? Okay, because that turned to be negative. So whatever. So I can afford. Maybe you can play actually here with 10 orders. I can afford 10 orders. Maybe I can afford 12 orders. No, I don't. I cannot afford 11 orders. Even 11 I can afford. So that's, you can, of course, all those settings are interconnected. So if you move the higher or lower boundary, or you change the number of levels, or you change the order size, all this is recalculated, and after you launch a couple of them, you'll get a hang of it. But just make sure that you check whenever you change something here, you just check that you have enough funds to run it. Actually, it's not that important. Like, we have, of course, a check here when you launch it will warn you if you don't have enough. But anyway, it's good to understand that you're good to go before you launch actual the grid. So okay, I think we've covered now everything apart from the advanced settings. Oh, there is one more thing left here. Remember that there are if you're trading on derivatives, that doesn't concern you, but if you're trading with grids on spot exchanges, make sure that you know whether you're paying on this exchange fees in base or quoted currency. So let me so base currency, by base currency in crypto trading, that's the coin you're trading, that's the base currency, and that's their quoted currency. So the price of the base currency is quoted in the quoted currency, so to say, right? So you say that one BNB costs 300 USDT. So that's why it's called quoted currency. That's the base currency. So there are some exchanges that charge you trading fee in base currency or quoted. So on some exchanges, if you trade this pair, you'll pay fees in USDT, and on some exchanges, you'll pay them in BNB. And for example, Binance, which we're looking at right now, is the exchange that charges commission in base currency. That means that each time your order executes, you'll need to pay to Binance some BNB. Okay, what that also means is that to trade on that exchange, to trade with BNB, you not only have to have enough BNB to launch the grid, but for it to run smoothly, you'll have to have some rather small amount of BNB left in your account so as to cover the fees of the Grid Algo. And the more it trades, the more you have to have on your account those, kind of base currency to cover those fees. And that's a very important thing to remember, because the last thing you want to do is to launch your grid on the spot instrument on an exchange like Binance that charges uh, fees and base currency, and then have it run for a while, but then just run out of the base currency to pay for the fees, and have it kicked out and closed in the middle of the process, so to say, because you run out of base fee. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Ways to avoid it, there are three. So first, trade on the exchanges with grids on the exchanges where the fees are paid in the quoted currency. That's not Binance, but probably you don't want to switch to exchange just for that. So Binance is a good exchange, and you want to trade here. So okay, if you trade in here, you're gonna pay in base currency. You either have to have it and constantly keep it in mind that you have to have that currency, and especially for the grids that run for a long time, for example, months or even years. At some point in time, you're going to run out of it, so you have to go back and check it and keep it constantly in mind that you're going to have it. But even on Binance, there is a neat trick to avoid that. If you check, in your Binance account settings, sorry, you check the checkbox and choose to pay fees in BNB. So it doesn't it doesn't work like that in case of this pair. But for example, if you're trading not BNB USDT but say BTC USDT, right? So as I said before, to trade this on Binance, you will be paying fees in BTC in base currency, so you'll be spending BTC all the time. You have to either have some BTC left on your account constantly, or you can choose to pay fees in BNB. Not only you will get their discount on their, I think it's 25% on the fee discount on spot trading with BNB on Binance, but you won't have to worry about having, all the coins that you are trading with grids on BNB to cover the fees. So the only coin you'll need to have is BNB to cover the fees. So you can, launch the grids on BTC, Ethereum, Cardano, what have you. So as many coins as you want, and you will only need to worry about having the coins to pay the fees. Is the only coin you need to have is BNB, rather than having all those 5 coins and looking after whether you have enough of it or not. So that's another neat trick. Okay, but that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's go back to our BNB pair. And the only thing which is left to cover is these advanced settings. The reason it's not open and it's called advanced settings, it's not that too advanced, it's just it's not 100% of time you need this, but it's better, like it's very advisable to familiarize yourself with it and understand what they mean. Warning here, especially if you're trading derivatives, that's not an optional, that's almost a mandatory. It's not 100% of the time that you need it, but most of the time that you need it. If you don't know what you're doing, then better use it. So advanced settings. So basically, advanced settings for now, there are only two. One is to choose the stops above and below. So that what that means is the price levels at which the grid will stop trading. Why do you need that? I remember if you watch the grid basics video, we were talking about that the grid has risks, right? So the risk with grid trading is always kind of easy to understand, and it's also very important. So your risk is that the market price will go out of the grid range, and if it does that, then you'll be left with a position on your hands. If the grid, for example, is launched right now and just the price just falls down, you'll buy two times, BNB, and you'll have that BNB in your hands, and the price will keep getting lower. So you'll be losing money basically on that, right? With holding that BNB. And of course, you can say that, I don't care, I'm okay with that. The price can recover or will recover, and I will wait for that. That's okay. That's why it's optional, right? So you don't want to, you don't have to stop. If you're okay with that risk, you don't have to put the stop below, but you have to be aware of that risk, right? And make the decision consciously. And the same, by the same token, is you launch the grid and the price goes up all the way and leave the grid range here. You have sold your BNB that you had, but you sold it, but the price keeps getting higher. That means you have this unrealized losses. If you wouldn't have sold it, then you would have been catching that upside, which you're not catching right now, and that's also a lost P&L. So again, the grid have risk, and the risk is that the price runs out of your grid range, and you'll lose money by having a position on your hands that will basically continue to lose money if the price goes against you. To limit your losses, or and it's even more in case of derivatives there. Besides just kind of paper losses, unrealized losses until you sell or buy back those coins, there is a real threat and risk of being liquidated, because you trade there on margin, or if you trade on spot exchange on margin, for example, by the same token. At some point, if the price goes up or down too much and too far from grid range, you'll be liquidated. And you want to prevent that. To prevent that, you might want to set up stops. Again, if you're trading derivatives, 99% of the times you want to set up them. If you're trading spot instruments, it depends on the coin that you're trading on, your view of the market, of your tolerance for risk. But in general, you would rather want to use them. So let's see how they work. Let's set a stop above at 1% and down at 1%. Maybe it's too tight. Maybe 5%. 5%. I cannot even see it. Okay, 2%. 2%. Okay, 2% here, 2% here, just for the illustrative purposes. So what that means is, you see, that's the stop above. Stop above is 2% above the highest grid level. So we take the highest grid level and go up 2% and set a stop here. And by in the same way, we do it for the lowest grid level. So stop below is also at 2%. That means that we take 2% of this price and set a stop here. Here are the price levels for you to just easier to eyeball, where the stops will be. So the highest grid level will be at 330, and the stop above it will be at 337. And the same way for the lowest grid level. What that means is if and when the price leaves the grid range, and if it reaches this level, then what's gonna happen is the grid is gonna stop. What would that mean? It will basically cancel all the open orders, and it will forget about that it's been existing, and it won't send any new orders. So basically, once again, if you set a stop above and below, or below, and the market price at any point in time after the grid is launched leaves its range and hits the stop level here, the grid stops, cancels all open orders, and it won't be sending any more orders in the future, even if the price moves back to the grid range. That's clear, right? So again, that's done for risk management. Whether to put it at all or put it, the distance at which you want to put it, that depends on your risk tolerance and your what you expect to the market to behave, the volatility and everything else. But that's something that we will cover in a separate portion of video on risk management. The goal of this video is to show you how the basic functionality works, how the stops work. And there is another setting here checkbox, which is on by default, which says close position when algo stops. What does that mean? Remember, if the price left the range of the grid and it went down to as much as to be near the stop or about to hit the stop, that means that you have an open position on your hands. For example, if you start here, grid doesn't have any position, will buy BNB here and buy BNB here, you'll have a position of 2 times the order size of BNB. So, for example, if you set order size at 1 BNB and the price goes down, you bought 1 BNB here, 1 BNB here, you have 2 BNBs. And when the price hits the stop and the grid stops consequently, if this box is checked, it will close the position, meaning it will sell the BNB that you bought here and here, it will sell it here at market price. That's actually explained here, right? So it will set market order to make sure that it will be sold. The market order will be sent at this price to close your position. So why it's down? Of course, you bought BNB here and here, and if you sell it here, of course, you'll lose money, right? So because you bought it higher and sold it cheaper, but it's done to prevent you from losing even more money, because if you zoom out, right, the price can go much, much, much lower, and basically you'll be losing more, a lot more than if you just sold it here. So basically, you can think of this checkbox as kind of a stop loss, right? So if the box is not checked, then the stops just stop the grid, so it will just stop it and cancel all orders, but it won't stop your losses because you'll be left with the open position. But if the box is checked, whenever the grid stops, if it hits the stop here, your position will be closed and your losses will be limited. You won't be losing any more money. What is important to understand here is that even if you didn't set any, so for example, let me just reload this page. Let's say it's a new grid, we just come to stop here. So I didn't change those are the default settings that we have here. The thing is that you don't have any stops, but this box is checked all the time by default. The reason for that is that the grid can be stopped not only if it hits the stops, but that's kind of 99% of the time, but there are other cases in which grid can be stopped. For example, you can run out of their base currency to pay the fees, and order will be cancelled and the grid will stop. Or you do something which you're not supposed to do. For example, you go to the exchange and you manually cancel one of the grid orders. Whenever grid senses that something is wrong with it, it cannot, it's not in the balance. It's supposed to have, this amount of orders. It doesn't have it. You will have an error on the grid, and the grid will stop. By the same token, exchange could break down, the API could break down. That's also, that's not something that happens often, but it does happen, and you have to be prepared for that. In case that happens, or for example, which goes more frequently, happens more frequently, exchange goes into maintenance. If it goes into maintenance, the API gets shut down, and your grid won't be able to send an order at some point or receive a response from the exchange. It will also stop. And if it stops for any reason, either by the hits and the stops, or because of your actions or something happening on the exchange, then it will also close the position. That's kind of a safety thing. So again, not to leave you with the position with unlimited losses. For example, just imagine that you had a position of, I don't know, bought BNB at 300 and the exchange went into maintenance for 12 hours, and you were left with open position, and the only way to sell it was when to exchange reopens, and in 12 hours BNB just tanked because Binance was down. It tanked to $100, exchange reopens, you have all these losses on the hand. To prevent that, this checkbox is checked by default. Of course, if you are more risk-taking and much more adventurous than we are, or than you should be, then you can uncheck it, right? That's something that as you can see, you can do. The stops are not here. You can use them, or you cannot. Or you don't have to use them. And with thing, you can also, check it or uncheck it. Important thing is that even if you start the grid, this box can be checked or unchecked even when the grid is running. So that option is left to you. Okay, that's pretty much all of the basic functionality of the grid, of this launching the grid on spot instrument via GoodCrypto we've covered in this video. Let me actually, there's only one thing left. Let me actually launch this grid and see what other settings become available once you actually launched. We won't go into details of the analysis of the fields and the numbers that are there and algo details once it launched. That's again a topic of separate video, but I'll just show you that there are a couple more settings that become available once you launch the grid. So let me keep it simple. Let's leave settings as they are. Let's put the order size here. Let's set up stops at 5% below and above. I have enough money for that. Actually, you can also see here that same with manual trading, we actually try to tell you in words what you've just set up. So let's just double check. We've built 5 levels grid of limit orders of 0.033 BNB USDT each. And when any order gets filled, the grid will place an opposite order at the adjacent level. So, right, that's grid basics, grid 101. If a buy order executes, it will place a sell order on one grid level above, and if a sell order executes, it will place a buy order on one grid level below. And as we added the stops, you see here we have a separate textual description on the stops. So when the price rises to this, that's 5% above the grid range, we will cancel all orders and close current positions. Same with the stops here. And if you unchecked this box, you see the part of close current position kind of disappears, right? So that's it. Okay, let's leave everything on and let's actually launch the grid. Okay, here we go. What we have here, we have here a lot of information and a lot of things to analyze and understand, but that's something again for our different discussion. Let's make sure, okay, the grid open those orders that we've been seeing. So these are our 5 grid levels, our sell orders, our buy orders, our idle grid level, which is closest to the market price at the time we've launched the grid. Okay, so we have here our stops. As I said, this close position on algo stops checkbox remains. You can edit it once the grid actually started. You cannot edit stops at the moment, but it's something probably is gonna come to the app. So you might be looking at this screen now, and you can actually see that the stops can be edited or turned off after it has launched. But yeah, that's something that's coming to the app. But so the only settings which appear now that you haven't had previously are these. So here we have notification settings. So by default, these are by default settings. The grid will notify you, meaning send you a push message on every PNL change. That means that if the grid, for example, buys here and sells here, you get a PNL, you'll get notification that. If the grid sells here and buys here, you get a PNL change, you get notification. You also get a separate notification when it enters or exits the range. So if the price goes above the grid and leaves the range, you'll get a notification. If it then goes back down, you'll get another notification. That's this one. You'll get a notification when the algo stops, whether it's because it hit your stop levels or something bad happened. There was an error, or you canceled some orders, or exchange done something bad, or God forbid we we've done something wrong and because of some internal mistake. That doesn't happen too often, but it might happen. In any case, when your grid stops, your algo stops, you'll get a notification as well. The only unchecked box is every order execution. We don't check it, we don't turn it on by default because the grid can be quite nasty in a way that it can trade very, very often. So if you set up a very tight grid with a lot of grid levels, you'll be spammed basically with notifications. Even this checkbox, that means that every second order or so, okay, more or less in the long run, every second order you get this notification. If you check this box, you'll get notifications, even more notifications whenever any order executes. But given that, for example, this grid has just 5 levels and it's relatively loose, so it won't trade that much. So in this case, I might want to check that box as well. And of course, as with this checkbox, they can be changed at any time. So you can play with it. You run in your grid, you have too many notifications, you check the boxes off. If you're bored and you want more push messages, then you turn it back on. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover in today's video. I thought that it would be relatively brief because to me it seemed kind of obvious, and not that many, not that many settings are here in the when setting up the grid, but turned out to be quite lengthy. Again, it's just kind of a first step in your grid trading. We'll be covering a lot more in the following videos, setting up the grid for derivatives, choosing pros and cons of choosing the grid range, the number of levels, the tightness and the level of tightness of the grid. We'll talk about risk management and stops, and we'll also talk separately on the market situations when you want to use the grid and when you don't want to use the grid, and when you even generally you want to use the grid in the trending, not in the trending market, but when the market is relatively quiet and stays within the range. But even for trending market, there is a way to profit from the grids. This again will be covered in separate videos. Hope you like it. Please let me know in the comments below the video what should be done differently. Maybe we need more details, less details. You want me to go faster, slower. You want something else covered that is not covered in the videos yet. And of course, subscribe and share. We'll appreciate that very much. And once again, that was all shown inside the GoodCrypto app. It's a trading terminal that now supports 35 largest exchanges, and it has a lot of interesting functionality. I won't be going on too long about it, but grid algos are one of its core features, and they can be run or tried even without paying anything. We have a 14 days free trial for all our pro features, including grid levels. Thank you. Bye.